loan, is that something that you think you can give me like a zero payment? I don't want any interest either, by the way.
Yeah, and first of all, I want to say when we're talking about the loan stuff, it's not that people think that when you get in the legislature and you're a public person, you're out there and everything you do, and sometimes I equate it to getting arrested. Everything you do and say can and will be used against you. But I've been on hard times in my life. Could be there again tomorrow. When it's not that we're mocking people on hard times. So when we're talking about the loan part, what we're talking about is the hypocrisy of these people. I mean, you sit here and you look at it, and I keep telling people, well, I go to the bank, but when I said earlier about the legislators, it's like real life doesn't insulate you, or being elected doesn't insulate you from real life problems and issues and mistakes, and screw-ups and bad judgments once you're in the legislature, but you're a public person, and all those things can be a pinata when those things happen to you the same way it can happen to you in real life. But the difference is the hypocrisy of these people. And I sit there and tell people now, I said, I just have operated in real life the same way I do down there in the legislature, in that when I need money, I go to the bank, okay? And if you're down there to the point that you're having to borrow money off friends and things like that, you don't need to be down there managing a $25 billion budget. And yet these people just continue to just say, and the media, they come out with enough that just throws a tidbit at that shows that, hey, we're trying to do something, but they're not digging. And that's why we've got the problem that we are. And these little stories are they're just minor things that's blowing up over the surface. And you sit there and think, I didn't know, or you could, we knew it was going on. It's been talked about. This news story wasn't anything new. They just finally had to report on something to actually make it seem like they had to do something. This has been going on for a while. But, Paul, here's the thing. Okay. I got a confession.
Okay.
All right, I got a confession. We've sit here at the farm or in business, and you buy something and you think, no interest loan. No, probably this, well, we know it's built in and all that, but it makes us feel better. So when this actually broke out, I thought, how do I get one of these? Now, this is very key that all three important parts are to this, because that's the way somehow these people have operated. I can't believe they have, but, I'm a cynic. Okay, it's a no payment, no interest, no obligation loan. Okay, it's all three things. So I thought, so when I saw Jim Hendren the other day, I asked him, I said, hey, Jim, you got any money you can loan? And unfortunately, I was told no. Okay, so I did not. I'm just going to confess to the people out there that, hey, I got weak, okay, and I thought, man, who doesn't want a no payment, no interest, no obligation loan? To me, that's like the trifecta of loans. I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, it certainly is, and I just can't imagine why Senator Hendren thought that Jake Files was good enough to get that zero payment, zero interest, no obligation loan, but the great Senator Brian King wasn't.
Yeah, I don't know about great, but no, I was not. And think about this. At that point in time, this is why the media didn't do anything, and that the media will still never cover any of my Medicaid disclosure bills that I was saying something years ago. They won't. They just sit back and just don't. How many times did Roby Brock have Jeremy Hutchison on his show? Mm-hmm. Name one time he ever asked him any tough questions about what was going on, about what we knew has been going on for years down there.
Yeah,
okay? Nothing.
And there isn't anything. Yeah.
No, there's nothing, and they're just barely dig. But so Jim Hendren loans $4,000 to Jake Files out of friendship. At the time, I think
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us today. Some of you in the middle of your first sip of coffee. Maybe you haven't even had any coffee yet, but hey, we just want to thank you so much for starting the beginning of your day with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. We got a great show for you coming up at 7 o'clock, an hour from now. We're going to be talking with a friend. His name is Hunter Rivet. He's been on before for our Young Conservative Future segment before. And so we'll be talking with him. I understand he is an intern this semester with Conduit for Commerce, among other things. We'll go over that at 7 o'clock. Also, we got a carefully crafted language coming your way, a carefully crafted language segment. Going to highlight something that was said in relation to the just the constantly evolving Arkansas corruption that we see in the headlines on a daily basis. At 7:33, we'll be talking with National Second Amendment advocate Mr. Dan Wass is back on the program, the author of that book I'm sure many of you have read, Good Gun, Bad Guy. We'll be talking really just about leftist tactics. Oh, that's actually what's on the whiteboard for the rest of the week. Leftist tactics. Whether they're the tactics of the left when it comes to trying to take your Second Amendment away, whether it's the leftist tactics that took place during the entire Brett Kavanaugh debacle. We'll be having a good conversation with Mr. Dan Wass about that. It's always great to have him on. Via our video uplink capabilities that we have. So you certainly want to stay tuned for all that. So let's talk a little bit about where you can get the show digitally. Okay, YouTube, Conduit News. Go subscribe. Click the little bell for notifications. We really appreciate that. Also, right now, currently at facebook.com/Conduit News. And don't forget to go over to the brand new conduitnews.com for all the stories about Arkansas politics and beyond. That's conduitnews.com. All right, let's get started here this morning. President Donald Trump at the swearing-in ceremony of Supreme Court Justice, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh. You're never going to get tired of saying that if you're a conservative. You're never going to get tired of saying that if you were watching this whole thing unfold, that we've seen when it comes to, the Democrats, what they were doing, how Dianne Feinstein sat on the letter. I mean, President Trump pulled no punches in describing what actually happened versus what the media will tell you happened, right? All survivors. We believe survivors. We believe survivors. Okay, all right. Okay, well, we're just trying to determine whether or not the accusers are survivors. And if they are, we need to be able to figure out who, where, when. Okay, and the who was the biggest doubter, right? And the left's like, you mean you don't believe survivors? Whoa. I mean, they were trying to really just undermine the entire, and of course, I really think the left in this country is, they have a problem with Western civilization in general. So it's no surprise that they try to upend the bedrock principle of being innocent until proven guilty here, right? And just demagoguing the situation and whether you believe Christine Blasey Ford or not, the bottom line is she was certainly used in the capacity that was calculated, and the calculation was what's going to give us the most, the higher probability of derailing President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, and that's all this was. I will say that up at ConduitNews.com we have the interview from Mr. Brian Maloney yesterday, where he said that the president now actually has a lot of political wind at his back after this whole process. But one of the things he said yesterday in the interview, Mr. Brian Maloney, was that, if anything, the past 2 weeks, believe it or not, all the focus has been on Brett Kavanaugh, and President Trump hasn't been attacked the way you would think. It wasn't just President Trump out there taking the slings and arrows of the mainstream media constantly the way it normally is. It was Brett Kavanaugh, and then in essence Chuck Grassley, Lindsey Graham, the rest of the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Mitch McConnell, and so it was actually more of a unified front, and that's, again, why you have these polls saying that now you have voter enthusiasm essentially tied when it comes to what's going on, what's coming up at the midterm elections. Fascinating last 2 weeks. Here's President Donald Trump yesterday, and he started the ceremony by saying this.
I would like to begin tonight's proceeding differently than perhaps any other event of such magnitude. On behalf of our nation, I want to apologize to Brett and the entire Kavanaugh family for the terrible pain and suffering you have been forced to endure. Those who step forward to serve our country deserve a fair and dignified evaluation, not a campaign of political and personal destruction based on lies and deception. What happened to the Kavanaugh family violates every notion of fairness, decency, and due process. Our country, a man or a woman, must always be presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. And with that, I must state that you, sir, under historic scrutiny, were proven innocent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's going. The left is going to melt
Margaret
down.
and Liza, your father is a great man. He is a man of decency, character, kindness, and courage, who has devoted his life to serving his fellow citizens. And now, from the bench of our nation's highest court, your father will defend the eternal rights and freedoms of all Americans. You know that. We are joined tonight by a leader who has never wavered in his support and devotion
All right, stop.
to the rule of law.
So then he goes on and he recognizes Mitch McConnell. He recognizes Chuck Grassley and some others. And anyway, but yeah, I'm glad he said that. I'm thrilled that he said that. And of course, the left is going to melt down that he said he was proven innocent. But this was he went on to call this essentially, a plot and, lies, deceit, and everything else. So that's President Trump yesterday. Now, I have this article. I saw this, let's see here, back on the 8th. Okay, so that was yesterday. So the headline here, Republicans fear Democratic blue wave spreading to once safe districts. Now, I keep hearing, this is from Reuters, so you take this with a grain of salt, but I have heard this. I've just headlines after headline of, Republicans are worried. Republicans are worried. Now, yeah, sure. Who's not worried about the possibility of Republicans losing the House? Okay. So there's some, but it is really overload, and it really feels familiar of the fact that, familiar in terms of, when in 2016 you heard, Hillary's going to win in a landslide. It's just a matter of fact voter suppression, if you will, these voter suppression efforts because, people want to be on winning sides. And so, hey, might as well don't show up and vote because the Democrats are, they've already got this in the bag. That's what you're hearing, right? And you've heard this for months now. Okay, you've got these folks saying that this O'Rourke guy is going to beat Ted Cruz. Really? The man wants to abolish the Second Amendment in Texas, and you're telling me that the folks aren't going to turn out and vote for Ted Cruz? It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, it could happen, but we're being told that it's going to happen from what I can see. Okay, so you have that. Well, here's this town hall piece. I saw this yesterday, which is kind of, it is town hall, and I like town hall, but pollsters are now saying that Democrats might fall short in retaking the House, which could trigger another meltdown. Can you imagine if the Democrats fail here, what's going to happen? So with Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh, this is an article, again, Town Hall, written by Matt Vespa. Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh of the Supreme Court after a hellacious confirmation battle. It's no shocker that liberals are angry. They lost. We won. Regardless, Democrats losing means it was a great day in America. Still, we've heard about the blue wave, the hyper-democratic voter enthusiasm, and how some revolution will begin now that Kavanaugh has been seated, undoubtedly constrained to the most liberal parts of the country. The generic ballot advantage has favored the Democratic Party all year. Well, it's just like it favored Hillary Clinton the entire time in 2016, I suppose. The left's character assassination campaign against Kavanaugh has energized Republicans like never before. Republican women are furious over this smear campaign, and they're ready to punish Democrats for it. Not all women, indeed. Now with the GOP base just as animated, it's now confirmed that the Democrats' Destroy Kavanaugh campaign wasn't a brilliant kill shot. It was a dirty bomb that blew up in their faces. Pollsters from the New York Times, CBS News, and 538 are giving rather measured analyses on the upcoming midterm election, which are 29 days away. In short, the Democrats could fall short of retaking the House, with the GOP in better shape for the Senate races, which has always been the case. The fact that the left could fail in their titanic endeavor would be another meltdown of epic proportions, one that I want to happen so desperately. So this is Matt Vespa here. Yeah, I think we all want that, just in terms of we want the country to survive. But you can expect, I think later in the week I've got an old video pulled up of, remember the woman that when President Trump was being sworn in, I think she was a woman. Wasn't she a woman, Joe? And she was just yelling up at the sky, No! Kind of like, there's a lot of, I think there's some Darth Vader memes that were created as a result of that. But, where's Padme? So she's already. We're going to have all kinds of those things if the left fails here again. We really are. I mean, remember the story a couple of weeks ago we brought to you about how the therapists in Washington D.C. are actually seeing an uptick. I mean, their economic prosperity is doing quite well because Trump derangement syndrome is an actual thing. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. Can you turn those pods off, Joe? There's just this humming in my ear. I want you to think about this for a second. In terms of leftist, people, going to therapists, needing therapy, why is it that you do have so many leftists who need therapy because President Donald Trump is in office? Well, it's because they feel insecure. Can we say that? Could we say that just, at the very least, they feel insecure? Well, why do they feel insecure? Well, because they had security in the government as it was. They had security when the media told them that Barack Obama was the best president ever because he just won the Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing. They felt secure. They were being fed a steady flow of information from Google News, from CNN, from NBC, from ABC, from all of these networks, that things were just as they were, that we had a president who was presidential, that we had a system that was working for them, right? That's what they were being told. And then they were told that America was going to elect a KGB agent as well as, at the same time, simultaneously being a Nazi. And they were told that, they believed it, so now they feel insecure and they just don't know how to cope. What it shows you is these leftists that are now in therapy because of Trump derangement syndrome, that they had I'll say this, they had an unhealthy, really just an insecurity complex, and it was based on they felt secure because the government essentially was telling them that they're secure. And now we have the propaganda corporate media telling them that they shouldn't feel secure about these things. And, well, therapists are now getting rich in the Washington, D.C. area. You can go back up and look up the article. It's fascinating. We're going to take a break. 870-275-9799. Thanks so much for listening. Good morning to you. Back in a moment.
Jake was living in a $1.5 million home with pools and tennis courts and flying a plane back and forth to Little Rock and driving like an $80,000, $90,000 rig. Now, I don't know about you, but, and, you know, hey, we like to think of ourselves as maybe at the worst being degrading cynics. Jim Hendren thinks of you as Al-Qaeda or ISIS, okay?
Mm-hmm,
and
yeah.
probably me too. But that's obvious. Maybe because I have terrorist affiliations is the reason Jim Hendren wouldn't give me a no payment, no interest, no obligation loan like he's done other people. I don't know. But it just amazes me how they give these answers, and you know, I just don't see how they just sit there and go on and act like they're for transparency and they're for open, honest government. Jim Hendren has not been for that. He's actually fought it, but you will.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Telephone number 870-275-9799. From Breitbart News, headline, companies, universities hire Chinese researchers and ignore national security worries. So, you got universities, which I'm sure many of them are taxpayer funded. You have companies. And you have that corporate public partnership mentality that's really seeps into Arkansas because of Governor Asa Hutchinson's chief economic development policy has to do with doing business with the communist Chinese. And this is a fact that I really just can't get over. Neil Monroe writes that corporate and university managers are hiring a huge number of Chinese researchers amid widespread recognition that China's government is conducting an aggressive spy campaign. Quote, American universities are major enablers of China's economic and military rise, said a Pentagon report published in September. Slammed elite universities for their cooperation with Chinese researchers. The report titled Assessing and Strengthening the Manufacturing and Defense Industrial Base and Supply Chain Resiliency of the United States. Growth in advanced science and engineering degrees shows the U.S. graduating shows the U.S. graduating the largest number of doctorate recipients of any individual country, but 37% were earned by temporary visa holders, with as many as 25% of STEM graduates in the U.S. being Chinese nationals. At least 50,000 Chinese-born technology graduates begin working in the United States each year, either with temporary work permits or with permanent green cards, according to government data. Universities hire 10,000 Chinese graduate researchers for federal projects, and companies sponsor roughly 10,000 Chinese for green cards each year. The resident working population of Chinese technology experts is at least 150,000, not counting the many Chinese who have already gotten green cards or become citizens. That huge inflow has fueled concern in President Donald Trump's administration, which is now taking several steps to reduce U.S. dependence on Chinese researchers. But the widespread reliance on Chinese labor is federal policy, according to Eric Weinstein, the managing director of Thiel Capital, an investment firm owned by Peter Thiel. In March 2017, Weinstein wrote that the policy was adopted in the 1980s by U.S. research leaders who wanted, quote, to keep American scientific employers from having to pay the full U.S. market price of high-skilled labor. They hope to keep the U.S. research system staffed with employees classified as trainees, students, and postdocs for the benefit of employers. The result would be to render the U.S. scientific workforce more docile and pliable to authority and senior researchers by attempting to ensure this labor market sector is always flooded, largely by employer-friendly visa holders who lack full rights to respond to wage signals in the U.S. labor market. Wow. Wow. Folks, none of this would be coming to light if President Donald Trump wasn't in the White House. I mean, you heard the rhetoric during the campaign. You heard the stuff about our jobs being shipped overseas and everything else. But then, of course, you hear why a lot of corporate folks don't want to build the wall because of cheap immigrant labor. Well, I mean, to them, it's not only, cheap immigrant labor, it's also high-skilled immigrant labor, apparently, that's been going on, according to this, since the 1980s. I understand that at this little forum between gubernatorial candidates here in Arkansas, Governor Asa Hutchinson once again cited the concept of creating jobs by using the Rui Shandong Province Paper Company and moving them in to Forest City. He said right now that project is stuck in the pipeline. President Donald Trump is the reason it's stuck. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
Never see a news story about it, and Doug Thompson and the media will write love stories about him and Asa Barchester.
Yeah, and it's odd that the mainstream media is doing that when, technically these people, they're Republicans, and it's really, really interesting how there is this status quo, basically, circle the wagon support for those who are in positions of power, maintaining the status quo, and you kind of got to wonder, what's really going on behind the scenes. Did you see this story over at the Arkansas Neighbors Project, where Mark Moore, exposes this in this Noble plea, I guess? Yeah,
I commented in it.
Yeah. That's right. He asked you for a comment. So you have Preferred Family Healthcare owning this nice house in Florida and this nice 5,000 plus square foot lake house in Eureka Springs. I mean, that's in Carroll County. That's in your district. And the question is, what legislators, have stayed here? You say you haven't ever stayed at this place.
No, didn't know. I mean, my dad was telling me that he thought that kind of in a journalism wisdom deal, he said, well, at least they stole the money, but they spent some of it back here in Carroll County. I guess if you wanted to try and find a positive out of it. But, yeah, I mean, where is that? Where is it? It has come out in court documents that possibly a lobbyist paid for John Woods' wedding reception. No digging on that. But, God, if I take a trip, remember a few years ago when I took a trip, and I disclosed it to the Foundation of Government Accountability, which I was a speaker down there at a conference. My gosh, I think there was no less than half a dozen op-eds and news stories. There was at least 6 to 10 news stories out there about how I took that. Brummett wrote about it 2 or 3 times. I mean, man, they went crazy over it, and that's fine. I mean, when I took it, I think, well, I might as well be ready to, face the music, and I did. And you know what? Where is any? You have a court document that comes out that outlines this stuff, and nothing. No digging, no asking questions. I mean, I thought that I was going to have to move to a cave in Bolivia to get away from answering questions about a trip that I reported that was okayed by the Ethics Commission well in advance of when I did it.
Yeah. And that's the whole point. Disclose. I mean, how many legislators, and come on, this is Arkansas. We know the level of corruption. How many legislators are not okay with taking cash payments? How many legislators are not attorneys that have stated...
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. We have the former president of Ecclesia College. Now, we're still waiting as a state to figure out exactly how Ecclesia College, this, quote, Christian, end quote, school, how they spent all this taxpayer money. This, in general, the entire situation with Ecclesia College was an attempt by insiders and politicians to essentially create another taxpayer-funded university, to create a new taxpayer-funded university here in Arkansas without the taxpayers finding out about it. What I mean by that is they were in such poor financial condition that in order to survive, they turned to the government. They wanted to, though, keep their privacy and anonymity, but they wanted to take taxpayer dollars from politicians through general improvement funds. And not only that, there was even a scheme unveiled in federal court where they wanted to find a way to take some of the tax proceeds from medical marijuana and send it to Ecclesia College. That's right. You heard that correctly, right? And the reason they were going to do that is because the ends justify the means. The means of people smoking pot might not be something that a Christian college agrees with, but because they're doing something that is, well, this was said in the courtroom. Basically, they're doing something that's evil, but we'll take their money and use it for something that's good. This, ladies and gentlemen, was the mentality of the people running and advising Ecclesia College. We still don't know how they spent their money. We do know that the former president of the Arkansas College, Orrin Paris III, and the lobbyist consultant that was involved in the money laundering scheme, along with, of course, Rusty Cranford and John Woods. But Randall Shelton and Orrin Paris have been ordered to report to prison. This is an article by Lisa Hammersley, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. See, when was this written? This was a couple days ago, 3 days ago. A federal judge in Fayetteville on Friday denied requests by former Ecclesia College president Orrin Paris and political consultant Randall Shelton to remain free while they appeal convictions. U.S. District Judge Timothy Brooks ordered Shelton to report to a federal Bureau of Prisons facility at 1 p.m. Monday. So that happened. And the date is set when Shelton was sentenced earlier this year on 12 felony counts. Paris, who pleaded guilty to one count but reserved the right to appeal, must report to a federal prison by 1 p.m. on Wednesday. So they're starting their prison sentences. Shelton is getting, 6 years? Paris was sentenced to 3 years. So anyway, we have that's happening. So, and of course, John Woods was sentenced to 18 years because he had no remorse and never wanted to admit that he'd done anything wrong. Now, in response to all of this, we have the Senate that's now trying to police themselves because they know that they look so terrible. Now, the media gives them public scrutiny for about 2 seconds, and then they basically move on. But, the Arkansas Senate at least is good at acting like they're embarrassed that all of this has been going on. The problem is you have the leadership, the governor's nephew, who's the majority leader, incoming president pro temp of the Senate, Jim Hendren. All of this stuff's been going on the whole time they've been down there. Everybody's known that this has been going on, and there's been no effort to do something about it until everybody was exposed and caught for being a part of a very corrupt system at the very least, from being complacent, from not using the Ethics Commission, from not, reporting people. We're going to talk at, the Carefully Crafted Language segment is about the way Jim Hendren answered the question from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette about how his the FBI didn't ask me to wear a wire. Very confusing statement if you go back and read that Carefully Crafted Language. We're going to analyze that coming up at 7 in that 7 o'clock hour. But if you got a guy that asks you for a loan, you got a guy that asks you for a bribe in order to not run against you, which is what John Woods asked Senator Jim Hendren, and then Senator Jim Hendren doesn't cooperate with the FBI, and then goes ahead and supports John Woods because a true conservative was running against John Woods, then you've known the whole time. You've known the whole time. You just thought nobody would ever find out about all this. But we have now. And yet you guys are now somehow supposed to be credible to the people of Arkansas about policing yourselves and creating a new Senate Ethics Committee. Well, so they've created a new Senate Ethics Committee. And the latest on that, according to Michael Wickline, is that they're, trying to talk about how do we police attorneys who are legislators, because that seems to be a big problem. You have attorneys that are getting to make all kinds of money by getting around, the concept that, you shouldn't be able to make extra money for passing bills for somebody. And if you're any other profession, you can't do this. Any other profession can't say, hey, I'll vote the way you want me to, but you got to pay me money. But if you're an attorney, you can do this because you're an attorney. And so you can have a client that signs a contract and they can put you on retainer and you can do all of this stuff. It's okay because you're an attorney. It's a loophole. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing we do is we pump the brakes. And we publicly, which is what they did, we make public statements that say things like, well, we want to make sure that an attorney can still be down here. We certainly don't want to go too far. Never mind the fact that, I mean, our laws are the state they are. Our government is the state they are because of attorneys, for the most part. But we want to make sure that you can still be an attorney. You can still be an attorney and be a legislator. That's our main concern. Our main concern is not the fact that nobody in Arkansas who is politically conscious has any confidence that you guys are acting in the best interest of the people. You're down there right now, for the most part, it looks like you're down there benefiting from being in office. It's very easy to prove my point, by the way. Why did Jim Hendren, why did Asa, who knew what was going on, why hasn't the governor come out with an ethics reform plan? I mean, I know he's been talking about it now in debates and stuff. Why didn't they call out their own colleagues? Because they would have been labeled troublemakers. They would have been labeled not team players. They would have been labeled Senator Brian King 2.0. So they're more concerned with staying in office, staying in power, than they are exposing their colleagues who are doing things that are not just unethical, but are illegal. And now that they're caught, let's police ourselves. Let's form a new ethics committee. You will have to excuse me if I question your motives, but you guys are not above reproach at this point. You're well beyond that point. So they're looking at a rule, Michael Wickline reports. They need to find a way to police consultants and attorneys. Let me stop here. The answer, the Senate Ethics Committee, this is a Band-Aid. This is an attempt to just look good in the newspaper. And I know people are going to be upset with me when I say that, because you're going to say you always just condemn whatever the legislator tries to do. Well, that's because I know who's on the committee, number one. And number two, the only thing that's really going to fix this is a law with teeth, not a rule that governs the Arkansas Senate, but we need an actual law that has teeth, that are sharp teeth. None of this. Well, if I get fined, if I'm found out and I misspend my campaign money, I have 30 days to correct it on my reports. No harm, no foul. No. The do-over rule has got to go away. Okay? John Woods is responsible for that, and he's serving 18 years in prison. The rule change would apply to attorneys and consultants in the Senate who are retained by registered lobbyists or by individuals or entities employing registered lobbyists. The rule change also would apply to senators who participate in profit-sharing or cost-sharing agreements with their law or consulting firms when those firms are retained by lobbyists or by individuals or entities employing the lobbyists. The potential rule change was recommended Monday by the Senate Ethics Committee, which has been looking at ethics rules in the aftermath of several lawmakers being convicted. Quote, "This strikes at the heart of what I think we see as issues and what has been seen as issues over the last several years, according to current President Pro Tem Jonathan Dismang." He's one of the gang, by the way. "If you are willing to be employed by a lobbyist and sit as a member of the legislature, then it should not offend you to have to disclose that and the amount of money that you made from that lobbyist or the firm that employed the lobbyist." Okay. Yeah, so they're saying that you're going to have to disclose it. Senator Will Bond, these people have no shame, by the way. I think there's plenty of these people that will just disclose it and go on about their merry lives. Senator Will Bond, Democrat Little Rock, who's an attorney, said, "I don't think anybody wants their exact amount that they are paying their lawyer or whoever disclosed. Okay. Okay, that's fine. He goes on, I don't think that helps the public to know exactly the amount paid to a law firm partner who never served in the legislature and doesn't currently serve in the legislature. Okay? I mean, I see your point from a lawyer's standpoint, but boy, wouldn't that be a deterrent then, though? Wouldn't that be a great deterrent if I, the client, find out that because the law firm is employing a legislator, you have a legislator who's also a lawyer, I'm going to have to disclose the exact amount of money I'm paying? Well, if the lawyer's really that good, maybe you're okay with disclosing that. Or maybe you go find a law firm that's not tied up in politics. You see what they're doing here? They're more concerned with the elite than they are with honest government. They're more concerned with, I don't really think somebody would want to do that. That'd make it hard to do business. Okay, well then guess what? Maybe we shouldn't have this. We're trying to close the loophole. And I, for one, think it would be an excellent deterrent if you did have to disclose the exact amount of money that was being, at this point, you know what? How can you advocate for anything less? Well, he was given a loan for, over $12,500. That's one of the disclosure forms. Is it over? It's between $1,000 or $12,500 or $12,500 and beyond. But we have no idea. You just have to guess. If it's $12,500 and beyond, we don't know what the at this point, I don't see how you can settle for anything less than an exact dollar figure disclosed. None of this vagary. It's got to be exact. We need to know to the cent how much money you are making from being a legislature that is extra, all because you're an attorney and you get some sort of special rights and privileges. You see, these people down there still don't really understand how disconnected they are with you and me, who are not at the Marble Palace, who don't feel the clout and the specialness, the elevated sense of self that many of these people feel when they walk in that marble building down there. Let's see here. A financial disclosure statement would be filed with the Secretary of State. Let's see. Here it is. Yeah, this is exactly. Listen, this is exactly what I was just talking about. A financial disclosure statement would be filed with the Secretary of the Senate by January 31st of each year for the preceding calendar year. Senators would disclose the income in the following categories: at least $1,000 to less than $12,500, $12,500 to less than $50,000, $50,000 to less than $100,000, $100,000 to less than $250,000, and $250,000 or more. Some of these law firms have represented their clients for 70 to 80 years, unrelated to whether they had a person in the legislature or not. Bond said, I understand disclosing those clients and maybe even having a box to disclose income with ranges. But if you're going to have them disclose to the penny what they were paid in the prior year for legal service unrelated to government affairs, you are knocking out a group of possible people who could serve in the legislature, and which may be the intent. I get it. That's what I feel like the intent is. Well, I mean, maybe we need to have a public realization. Maybe we need to have maybe we do need to paint with a broad brush for a little while. I think we just need to be open to it, because, to not be open to it means that you don't understand really the severity of what's been going on here. Maybe our biggest... what if we said this? maybe one of our biggest problems in government in general is the fact that so many of our politicians are and have been attorneys. Anybody ever, I mean, what would be the popular public thought on that? What would be the popular public opinion on that? I mean, I know in this day and age, you know, we certainly don't want to stereotype, right? Right, that's not politically correct. You can't stereotype. But I got a feeling that there'd be a little double standard apply. I think if you ask people, even on the left, I think you would ask, do you think attorneys are a problem? You think that's why we have so many problems in our government? Because so many of the people who are politicians writing the laws we live under are, in fact, themselves attorneys. I think the answer would be an overwhelming probably. Maybe you guys shouldn't be down there. Maybe you should do something else. I mean, if you could snap your fingers, if you could do the old Thanos snap, and just, you know, for the past 100 years, attorneys who are legislators, and I know that well, who would be our politicians then? Oh, I don't know. People that make stuff for a living? Listen, I know that's unrealistic. I know there are politicians who are attorneys who have done good things, who are conservative. I get that. I understand that. I'm just making an observation here that I think some of this stuff at least needs to be considered and publicly realized, that the problem that we're facing right now, specifically the biggest problem with the corruption scandal in Arkansas, are the fact that attorneys get around the law and make extra money because they are attorneys. And so then to try to take that and trim around the edges, they're attorneys. They're going to find the loopholes. There's probably some of them right now sitting at the 1836 Club trying to figure out, how do we still keep the scheme going but pass a law and we get the positive publicity and press that says that we fixed the problem? There's probably people right now. I know it's 6:52, but, you know, hair of the dog, right? Phone number is 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break. Back in a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed roller lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives.
Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
This property. I mean, that's the real question here. Now, they're okay staying somewhere for free, but but the whole point is, have they reported it? And the answer is no, they haven't. And so, yeah, I mean, the media here, the statewide media, they have an absolute goldmine, especially those that have the access to get to some of these people to ask them questions. I mean, they have a gold mine here, a golden opportunity to expose even more corruption. And it's for the most part, it's crickets. I mean, even the loan story, even reporting on the loans, it's almost like they're reporting it because, well, we have to report this one. And I'm wondering if they weren't getting out in front of maybe some disclosures from the FBI or some U.S. attorneys in the coming weeks.
Who knows? I don't know. But, this has all been talked about. There, like I said, file bills. When you start wondering, there's a point in time there when you're down there that you think, is this really going on?
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. Hey, coming up, we're going to be talking with Mr. Hunter Rivet. Also at the bottom of the next hour, National Second Amendment advocate Mr. Dan Wass will be on the program. Going to talk about leftist tactics. So excited about this. Excited to talk to him about that. Oh, man. Let's see, what else do we have here? I want to remind everybody, go to conduitnews.com for all of your Arkansas news and beyond, really. That's where we also put up our smaller interviews that we cut for you guys, and we would appreciate it. One of the ways you can help build the Liberty Machine, by the way, is to, in fact, share those YouTube videos with your friends on Facebook and let them know who you are listening to every morning. Let them know that you're listening to Conduit News Radio with me, Paul Harrell, every morning to get your analysis of the news and events of the day. So the latest video we have up at the website is the Brian Maloney video. After Kavanaugh, Trump has political wind at his back. So check that out. Also, you need to know, right now on the front page, conduitnews.com is reminding you that today is the last day to register to vote in Arkansas. You can register to vote by mail in Arkansas by printing a voter registration form, filling it out, and mailing it to your local election office. You can also register to vote in person. Go register and vote in person. Let your voice be heard. 2018 Arkansas elections will take place on November 6th. If you go to conduitnews.com, they have the links in Arkansas for you to fill out your voter registration form online. You can follow this link to find the address to your local election office as well at conduitnews.com. Applications must be postmarked October 9th, 2018, meaning you can still do the mail, but you better put it in that post office box today. You also have a link to your local county clerk, and also have a number there for the Arkansas Secretary of State Elections Division. And so go there now. ConduitNews.com if you haven't registered to vote and you want to become part of this republic and have your voice heard all the way from your local city level all the way up to the federal level, Washington, D.C. We got one more hour coming your way next. Again, that story, last day to register to vote, it's up right now at ConduitNews.com.
talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
I mean, I spent years wondering that and stuff, and then, you just don't want to say anything till after,
Well,
sure.
Let me ask you this,
Brian.
Brian.
But we've had problem after problem after problem after problem, and yet you have those down there that are in it. You have those that either they're in with them in the inner circle to some level or something like that, and then you have the mass part that basically, some of them may say something every once in a while, but for the most part, they just keep their mouth shut. And
here's what I would say to the mainstream media that claims or likes to pretend that they are objective. Okay, giving you the benefit of the doubt for the sake of argument. Let's say you're objective. How is it not news to report that the governor backed Republicans who were primarying the two senators whose bills would have exposed exactly what has been going on down there? Your Medicaid disclosure bill would have exposed all of this. Linda Collins Smith would have prevented attorneys from being able to take money under the table to pass bills for their clients, which is what we're finding out has been going on down there.
Yeah, $500,000 named in Jeremy Hutchinson.
Yeah, named in federal court documents. How is that not a news story, the objective press, when you also have the Republican governor who is running for re-election, and by the way, this is his nephew who has been named as taking the $500,000, and the governor backs two other Republicans in a primary against the two most outspoken people for ethics reform who will not be going back in January? How is that not front page news to try to speak truth to power and to tell everybody in the state what's going on? And yet, there's no story about something like that.
Well, you go even farther than that. What about the Democrat Party and the Democrats down there? You don't hear anything about it. I mean, can you imagine if Donald Trump's nephew got a name from taking $500,000 in a court document? And I mean, it just is the whole world down there, and that's what makes it where when you speak out like you guys, you get the first thing that they need to do when you're speaking the truth or raise questions. I learned this down there. The biggest defense is they say you're crazy, you're a liar, you're wrong on the facts, even though they'll never back anything up that shows that you're not. They will, say you're a terrorist. So that's the defense that they do, and that's why Jim Hendren does what he does. And he
let me say this. It seems like Jim Hendren has been fighting against Conduit News because I think he knew eventually all this was going to come out, and that he's kind of swept up in this, whether it's the $4,000 to Jake Files or whether it's the fact that he knew John Woods was a scoundrel because John Woods tried to get a bribe from him. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that actually hurts his political credibility in the long run. But we were just exposing, the system, trying to speak truth to power. I mean, I didn't know Jim Hendren had been approached, and asked to offer give John Woods $10,000. I didn't know any of that. But as it starts coming out, it's now, oh wow, the people in charge of this whole system, in the leadership, they knew how bad it was, and they weren't doing anything about it. And only now that they're caught do they want to say, okay, now we'll fix it. Trust us, we'll fix it. Well, there's a serious trust gap there.
Yeah, and, let's even go a little farther here. What about Bart Hester? How many dirty deals does Bart Hester have to be involved in till people go, wait a minute here? I mean, he was involved in the Eccleston College deal to up to his neck and wallered in it. He then turned around and it was part of the John Woods GIF part down there to that sham deal that wound up getting medical equipment back to his dad. And then now he has actually been outed. I mean, it was more of a publicist, let's get this out there before it could get worse type deal, as going around. And here's another, I'm going to have another confession in a minute, Paul. Can I have another confession?
Yeah, go ahead.
Confessions in one show. when I was Republican leader, I didn't know it was my responsibility to go around setting up GoFundMe accounts for legislators that need money. Okay, I didn't do that. I didn't know.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us. This is hour number 2, and we're building a Liberty machine. We want you to be on board. We want you to help us build it. I want to remind you guys, you can go to conduitnews.com, share those YouTube videos with your friends on social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you do. And tell people that you're listening to Conduit News of the Morning. Folks, I want to welcome back to the program. We have a young man on the phone who is a conservative activist, a conservative at heart. He is a patriot, and his name is Hunter Rivet. Hunter, welcome back to the program, sir.
Good morning, Paul. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Hunter, tell us a little bit about, first of all, I understand that this semester you're an intern, interning with Conduit for Commerce. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm having a great time. A little while ago in the summer, Josh and Brenda met with me and asked if I'd like to get on board and help out with the various oiling and the tuning of the Great Liberty Machine. And I have been doing that right now. I'm looking into reports on bonds and taxation issues in the state, which you have spoke at length about, which are really absolutely, it's just mesmerizing how Arkansas likes to spend money and get in debt.
So you are, okay, so you said you're doing some research on bonds. So, I mean, that's not exactly, that doesn't sound like a very explosive or, doesn't sound like a very interesting topic. But, it's one of the ways, I think, that government actually, kind of uses covert debt, in order to maybe get things that they want that they can't really afford. What are your thoughts on that?
Paul, you're exactly right. And unfortunately, bonds, it's not a sexy issue. It's not like free speech or the Second Amendment. It doesn't get people riled up. But arguably, it's one of the most important because you're exactly right. Government will put debt upon the taxpayers. And we're talking millions of dollars just this last year. If you include Benton and Washington County together, over $1 billion in new debt to finance sidewalks, dog parks, new fire station helmets, all sorts of things. And voters happily support it. In the last Springdale bond issue, it passed over 85% of the vote with less than 10% reporting. So those who do vote are happy to vote for it. Now, whether they know what they're voting for or not, I have yet to figure this out in my research. But if you put on the ballot tax increase or even millage, those have higher probabilities of failing as opposed to bonds, which usually cost more and are more nefarious ways to get people to pay money for the government's wants.
That's that is fascinating, what you just said there. So you have people who don't like tax increases, they don't like millage increases, which are tax increases, but they will vote for bonds. Big government types know this. So I guess then the educational effort should be to try to connect the dots between a bond and a tax increase. Now, I've said on the program before, Hunter, that when you take out these bonds and you do this irresponsible debt, that it is a future tax increase, and a lot of times, because when you can't pay your debt, they're going to come back to the citizens, and then they really will ask for that tax increase. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're exactly right. Let's take, for instance, let's cover all parts of your question. The first is some of the greatest bond issuing and indebtedness has happened at the hands of our great Republican supermajority. Take, for instance, the bonds that were issued to Big River Steel and other companies like Lockheed Martin and Chinadelphia. In the House, the bond issuing for Big River Steel passed 98-0.
Wow.
More fight was put up in the Senate, but Republicans are happy to issue millions. We're talking billions in future tax increases, but no one wants to raise a hand. No one wants to say anything. And this is definitely what it is. And I think one of the lure with bonds is, we're not paying for it right now. We'll wait 10 years. Okay, but with interest and everything, that's going to be a more substantial burden upon the taxpayer. And it always comes out in usually, 1 to 2% increase in sales tax, an increase in property taxes or millage. The government money does not grow from trees. And if they want to grow government, we, the people, are going to have to pay for it.
Didn't we default on a bunch of bonds back in the 30s? And basically the state of Arkansas went bankrupt.
Yes, during the Great Depression, Arkansas, and it's funny, you'll hear economists say, during the Great Depression, we needed to raise taxes, we needed to have more government spending. Arkansas was one of those states that tried to do a socialist model. During the late 20s and the early 30s, Arkansas taxed at some of its highest rates and spent at some of its highest rates compared to earlier. This was a complete failure. They defaulted on many. They had to get bailed out by the federal government, which is still, people's taxpayer dollars. And business would choose not to come to the state for 30, 40 years afterwards because it was not a good economic environment. If the government is defaulting on this, why would we want to start a business here? This is one of the biggest problems with African nations, is that they have such corrupt and mismanaged governments that businesses won't start there. And it's unfortunate that we have to compare Arkansas to a third world country, but the way that our government is spending and taxing us, it's comparable, unfortunately.
Wow. And it just kind of dawned on me, the situation with that default in the 30s, if you're saying that then businesses didn't want to locate here because things were so bad, I mean, we wonder why. Some people ask the question, how did Arkansas's government get so big and so corrupt, and yet the states around us that really essentially have the same, in a lot of ways, the same, geographic location generally, but they're so much wealthier than us, Hunter.
Yes.
So it may be because of, just mismanagement and what happened in the 30s we're still recovering from.
We are still recovering from it. As far as geography goes, I understand, Paul, you are a scholar because you like to talk about geography, and which is really the key for some place to grow economically. I would argue, other than perhaps Missouri and Louisiana, Arkansas is uniquely blessed and gifted with its geographical location. It really has a middleman as far as eastern-western traffic goes with the Arkansas River, with the interstates. We have great people here who like to work, who are willing to work, but for some reason, our government continues to do us dirty, and whether it be through mismanaged loans, extravagant taxes, government spending, businesses will not come here, and other states are better business environments. We see it in multiple reports on how business-friendly Arkansas is a state, and it's never above 40. It's always in the bottom rung. I wish we could fix that, but I don't think our current administration – it's funny, I don't think our supermajorities of our great conservative Republicans are going to fix that anytime soon.
Yeah, well, they'll tell you, well, it just, it takes a long time. It takes a long time to turn this aircraft carrier around. Well, tell that to President Donald Trump. I mean, here's a guy who has made really sharp turns, and he's done it faster than I thought he would. He's done it faster than even his supporters thought he would. What he has accomplished, I mean, he has shown what a leader can do, whether it's the North Korea situation, whether it, and I know that's not resolved yet, but whether it's the North Korea situation, whether it's moving the embassy in Jerusalem, the tax, cuts, even the Supreme Court justices. I mean, 2 Supreme Court justices, and it could be 3, it could be 4, and it's amazing what somebody who's actually committed to getting an agenda done for the folks, how fast it can happen, but you got to be willing to take the hits. I don't think we have enough folks who are willing to take the hits and stand up to the media.
You're exactly right. Let's go back. Let's talk about our great President Donald Trump. We know what Asa thinks about Donald Trump. During the campaign, he hit him hard. He said this is a freak. This is a Trump train, Trump show. We don't have leadership on par with President Donald Trump. Asa is subpar. This is quite clear. Now, imagine how Arkansas would do if it had an economic policy like that with Donald Trump. If it had a leadership policy like that of Donald Trump, Trump understood that you've got to cut regulations. We've got more regulation than any other industry. You've got to cut taxes, one of the greatest tax cuts in history. And you've got to have someone who's willing to negotiate. Trump, he talked that up a bunch in the media. As we're seeing now, they attacked him. Oh, what do you have, a magic wand, Well, I mean, quite literally, yes. Donald Trump is a business maker. He gets on. He's calling people every day. He's making 300 phone calls a day. He's talking to business leaders. What can we do to get you here? Asa takes off his tie, sits down on his rear, and says, well, we have China, so we'll sell out to China. We'll get a couple paper companies. We'll get 10 jobs here or there. That's good enough for my people. He doesn't care. He's apathetic about his state. And, I mean, me and you have talked about this, and I think some other people in circles have talked about this. Asa is just using Arkansas as a stepping stool. I don't know if he truly cares about the economy, the business, the people of the state. Actions speak louder than words.
We're talking with Hunter Rivet. Now, Hunter, I want you to tell me about you're also a fellow with the Charles Koch Institute. What have you done with them so far this semester?
That's right. Well, that has just begun. We've been doing this for a month or just over a month. And right now we're just doing research and writing and more of a colloquium amongst us, just speaking about these libertarian ideas, speaking about these pro-business, pro-freedom ideas, which seem incredibly novel to someone like me and you, but that the greater population perhaps does not buy into. So we are reading some of the greats and writing and talking about Thomas Sowell, Frederick Bastiat, Charles Koch himself, some of these great libertarian thinkers who wanted business to succeed, wanted the American people to succeed, wanted true Americana, true patriotism.
With Frederick, you mentioned Frederick Bastiat, and I am particularly fond of his definition of legal plunder.
Yes.
And where he talks about how, the government is able basically to do things that if you and I were to do, it would be illegal. But they actually, they do things under the business can do it, the government can do things, and because they've got the guns and because it's the law, they're able to get by with a lot more than they should.
100%. I mean, what's the difference between a highway robber and the government? After the highway robber steals from you, that's it. He's not coming back, and you have a chance to defend yourself from that highway robber. But the government comes back every time, and you can't defend yourself from the government. So I would compare, just as Bastiat did, to legal plunder. That's exactly what it is. And for some reason, we have people saying you must be stolen from. You must give the government your money for the greater good. This is not true. At least to the levels we have now. Can we have a debate about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I'm trying to see here. I wanted to look up a quote while I have you, with the legal plunder, but I don't think my computer's my computer's not working. But anyway, Hunter, it's been great to have you on. We're out of time. I really appreciate it. Intern with Conduit for Commerce, also fellow with the Koch Institute, and I appreciate all the work you're doing. The conversation. It's always great to have you on, Hunter.
I appreciate you, Paul. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, all righty. Hunter Rivet, thanks. Everybody. We're going to have this video up at conduitnews.com sometime today. Share it with your friends. Excellent stuff on bonds and future tax increases. We're going to take a break. Back in a moment.
Oh, that was my responsibility. But that's what Bart Hester has been doing. And, you know, where do we go with these guys sitting there running around? And I'm not, like I said, I am not mocking somebody down on hard times. I've been there before, and I've needed help, and I've had people help me before, okay? And I'm not talking about, we're not talking about $100 a year or $200 a year. We're talking thousands of dollars, okay? Thousands of dollars. And you have Jake Files, who got a loan from a lobbyist, got another $80,000 we don't know anything about from some nursing home person, and now you have Bart Hester involved with arranging loans between legislators. So, and no more digging or questioning about it. Nothing at all. No more asking any more questions about it. So, you know, but once again, if you go out there and say something, Bart will run to Teresa Oakey and Americans.
I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The zip line has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the zip line. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. Some of these Frederic Bastiat quotes, I looked them up during the break because I had to get to them because they're so good. Here we go. In his piece called "The Law," Frederic Bastiat, quote, "But how is this legal plunder to be identified? Quite simply, see if the law takes from some persons what belongs to them and gives it to other persons to whom it does not belong. See if the law benefits one citizen at the expense of another by doing what the citizen himself cannot do without committing a crime. That is legal plunder." Here's another great quote. Everyone wants to live at the expense of the state. They forget that the state lives at the expense of everyone. Life, liberty, and property do not exist because men have made laws. On the contrary, it was the fact that life, liberty, and property existed beforehand that caused men to make laws in the first place. Boy, we have forgotten that one. We have forgotten that one, folks. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. Stop. The Arkansas legislature should have this etched into the walls of the Marble Palace. They should have to look at it when they come, both sides of the building, when they enter and leave the chamber. They should be forced to read this quote. When plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. You should have that tattooed on yourselves. This should be everywhere in the Marble Palace, because that's what they've done. And their little ethics committee that they've put together to try to change the rules, they need to be reading Frederick Bastiat quotes every time they meet. Frederick Bastiat, you miserable creatures, you who think that you are so great, you who judge humanity to be so small, you who wish to reform everything, why don't you reform yourselves? That task would be sufficient enough. Government is the great fiction through which everybody endeavors to live at the expense of everybody else. Now, legal plunder can be committed in an infinite number of ways. Thus, we have an infinite number of plans for organizing it. Tariffs, protection, benefits, subsidies, encouragements, progressive taxation, public schools, guaranteed jobs, guaranteed profits, minimum wages, a right to relief, a right to the tools of labor, free credit, and so on and so on. As long as it is admitted that the law may be diverted from its true purpose, that it may violate property instead of protecting it, then everyone will want to participate in making the law, either to protect himself against plunder or to use it for plunder. Each of us has a natural right from God to defend his person, his liberty, and his property. You say there are persons who lack education, and you turn to the law. But the law is not in itself a torch of learning which shines its light abroad. The law extends over a society where some persons have knowledge and others do not, where some citizens need to learn and others can teach. In this matter of education, the law has only two alternatives. It can permit this transaction of teaching and learning to operate freely and without the use of force, or it can force human wills in this matter by taking from some of them enough to pay the teachers who are appointed by government to instruct others without charge. But in the second case, the law commits legal plunder by violating liberty and property. Boy, that's offensive to our evolved sensibilities, isn't it? I would just say, reading these quotes, folks, most of the men who are governing us, I don't even know if they can wrap their heads around some of the stuff that's being said here. It's not pragmatic to them. Back in a minute. Senator Brian King is with us from District 5. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Paul.
Can I have a loan? Is that something that you think you can give me, like a zero payment? I don't want any interest either, by the way.
Yeah, and, first, Paul, I want to say when we're talking about the loan stuff, it's not that, people think that when you get in the legislature and you're a public person, you're out there and everything you do, and sometimes I equate it to, getting arrested, everything you do and say can and will be used against you. But, I've been on hard times in my life. Could be there again tomorrow. When it's not that, we're mocking people on hard times. So when we're talking about the loan part, what we're talking about is the hypocrisy of these people. I mean, you sit here and you look at it, and I keep telling people, well, I go to the bank, but when I said earlier about legislators, it's like real life doesn't insulate you, or being elected doesn't insulate you from real life problems and issues and mistakes and screw-ups and bad judgments once you're in the legislature, but you're a public person, and all those things can be a pinata when those things happen to you the same way it can happen to you in real life. But the difference is the hypocrisy of these people. And I sit there and tell people now, I said, I just have operated in real life the same way I do down there in the legislature, in that when I need money, I go to the bank, okay? And if you're down there to the point that you're having to borrow money off friends and things like that, you don't need to be down there managing a $25 billion budget. And yet these people just continue to just say, and the media, they come out with enough that just throws a tidbit at that shows that, hey, we're trying to do something, but they're not digging. And that's why we've got the problem that we are. And these little stories are they're just minor things that's blowing up over the surface. And you sit there and think, I didn't know, or you could, we knew it was going on. It's been talked about. This news story wasn't anything new. They just finally had to report on something to actually make it seem like they had to do something. This has been going on for a while. But, Paul, here's the thing. Okay. I got a confession.
Okay.
All right, I got a confession. We've sit here at the farm or in business, and you buy something and you think, no interest loan. No, probably this, well, we know it's built in.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We have with us now on the program, we got National Second Amendment advocate Dan Wass is back on the program. Dan, it's always great to have you on, sir. How are you?
Hey, Paul, great to be on your show again. What do you want to talk about? Crazy people?
If we can get Dan's audio queued up to where I can hear him, that would be better. Dan, go ahead.
You want to talk about crazy people today?
Yes, I do want to talk about crazy people today, Dan Wass. I want to remind everybody that you are the author of a book. Tell us about the two books that you are an author of.
Well, Paul, I just happen to have them with me.
Okay.
Good Gun, Bad Guy, and Good Gun, Bad Guy 2. And thanks for asking. I wrote Good Gun, Bad Guy because I got tired of watching the anti-gun radicals, destroy an honest gun narrative, and using all their strategies and tactics to basically scare people and convince people that gun owners are a danger to society. So I saw through the lies. I wrote the book, and it's turning out to be taken very well, especially by gun owners.
Yeah, I agree. And, what I think is, in there you talk about the different tactics of the left, and how they, compete, like you said, against these, Second Amendment arguments for why we need the right to self-defense. But with all this stuff going on the last 2 weeks, the leftist tactics are also, coming out when it comes to, stopping the Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and they failed. Just in general, what were your thoughts generally when you saw what's been going on the last 2 weeks with Donald Trump, Kavanaugh, the Republicans, and the Democrats?
I saw the Republicans trying to give both people a chance to speak their mind and.
Oh, sorry. Well, it looks like we lost Dan Wass for a second, so that is our fault. We are doing video uplink. So, Dan, we have you back. Go ahead, sir.
I saw them. I know Republicans wanted to give both people a chance, but the left seems.
Well, it looks like we have lost him again. Tell you what, we're kind of having some technical difficulties here. And so I'm not really sure what's going on. Maybe it's the internet connection or something like this. Let's try it one more time. Dan Wass, we have you back. The Democrat tactics, go for it.
They don't like due process, and I think they just wanted to see a win. See, I think what happened on the left is they created this little fantasy world, and they want everyone else to live in it. And when it comes to, accusing someone of something, there's a process, we have to go through. And they just don't like that because I think they knew that it was all just a bunch of nonsense. I don't believe it for a minute that Kavanaugh did any of the things that they're accusing him of.
Do you think, and I read a post of yours on Facebook where you said that this one of the main reasons the left was so vitriolic. I had said I think it's about Roe versus Wade. Obviously, Susan Collins in her speech, she kind of, cast him as a moderate on that issue, to say the least. But you had a fascinating post on Facebook where you said, I don't think Roe versus Wade is the main issue here. I think it is about them knowing the Second Amendment, and they're not going to be able to take anybody's guns away if Brett Kavanaugh's on the court. Talk about that.
That's exactly right. You see, they understand that he is a precedence. He would make his decisions based on precedent. So they know that. I don't think they're as scared for Roe v. Wade as they are of him protecting the Second Amendment. But they understand that the anger and the fear from their Democratic voters is stronger when it comes to the Roe v. Wade cause. So I believe there. Do we?
No, we've still got you. We still got you.
Oh,
Dan.
sorry. Okay, I thought you lost me. Okay,
yeah.
So I believe they are. I believe they're using.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There we go. All right. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and text. Let's say what we're going to do. We're going to stop this. I've got Dan Wass texting. We're going to have him call in on the phone, and we're going to abandon this idea here. And we're going to have Dan here in just a minute. So we gave him the backup number, because it really is. We want to get you this information, but he raises really good points. What he's saying is that, listen, Brett Kavanaugh, he says he's a precedent judge. Well, recently, say what you want to about the court, there have been some good precedents that have been established by the Supreme Court over the years. Okay. There have been when it comes to the Second Amendment, and that is the reason, he says, why this whole the Second Amendment is a lot bigger. And I didn't really mention that. I'll say that I was more about the Roe versus Wade. I still think I'm still gonna. Dan, I was just saying, we got you on the phone now. I still think Roe versus Wade here is is in play, but I do think you raise an interesting point about the Second Amendment. I mean, it really just comes to the fact that they can't get any wins from legislative victories very often. They have to have the courts to, institute their progressive agenda of reinterpreting what the Constitution says. Go ahead.
Well, that's exactly right. And I think that their biggest fear is that Kavanaugh will defend the precedents of Heller versus D.C., which is a Second Amendment case. And they're more afraid that they won't have the ability to violate citizens' gun rights. They're more afraid that they won't have that ability than they are of actually losing row, losing, that type of, so they're using the anger of their voters, and I think they're tricking them. I think they're really trying to make them believe that this is a Roe versus Wade thing, and that's why they keep pushing it. And they're not saying much about the Second Amendment, because here's the thing, Paul. When it comes to leftists rallying and fighting for causes, abortion is the biggest one. They will rally much more and much stronger than they will for Second Amendment stuff. So I think what they're trying to do is use that anger to keep. They were trying to use it to keep Kavanaugh off the bench because of off the Supreme Court rather, because they want to be able to have a little more access to destroy the Second Amendment.
Did you see the people that were clawing at the Supreme Court doors? Like, I don't know, just they were mad. They were just crazy.
And that's the thing, we try to logically talk to these people, but having a conversation with some of these people, you can see the irrational, reactive, emotional, behavior, and having a conversation is, about as with leftists most of the time is about as comfortable as snuggling a porcupine.
That's exactly right. Hey, what do you think about the potential for these midterm elections, all this stuff? What are you hearing? I mean, you're up in New York, right? New York State.
Yeah, I'm in New York, and we have a very liberal governor, two very liberal senators. You might know, you may have heard of Chuck Schumer.
Oh yeah, just a little bit.
And but what I'm hearing, upstate New York is completely different than New York City, and people get the two mixed up. They really, when they hear New York, they think of New York City, which is Liberalville, but it's not like that up here. We have plenty of Republican voters up here, so I always believe that we have a chance, and the energy for conservative values up here in upstate New York is huge, and they'll never let you know that, but it is.
Yeah. So I guess, I've heard from folks who, are at jobs. This is across the country. They kind of, there's a lot of honesty, I think, being talked about. I guess what I am hearing is, normally you don't talk religion, you don't talk politics because it's taboo.
Yeah.
But I think people are starting to talk politics more. I think they're starting to. I think there's things going on that are so concerning, whether it's the media being so anti-Trump, or whether it's the fact that, hey, this says a lot about our society if we're just going to have accusations about what somebody's high school yearbook, what kind of innuendo it was or wasn't making, and that's going to mean that you're not going to be able to get on the Supreme Court. I think it's concerned a lot of people, and some people, Democrat, independents, they're now saying that they're going to vote Republican straight down the ticket because they are so disgusted with what they are seeing. Do you think that is going on other places?
Well, I think there are a lot of logical people, and there are logical thinking people on the left. And, when people see that their rights and due process can be taken away from them, some of them do realize that, well, hey, this could be turned around, and this could work against me. So I do believe that there are people who are coming to their senses. But here's the problem. A lot of them on the left are locked in, and people can't understand why. Well, without, don't you see what's going on? Can't you see? Why are you still there on the left promoting this and going for? Well, they're locked in because they've been conditioned to fear and hate conservatives, Republicans, and they would never be able to come over to the right, even if their values were to change. Mm-hmm. They have burned that bridge, and that ship has sailed for them, so they're stuck.
Yeah, that is certainly the case of some. You do also have this walkaway movement. You're familiar with the walkaway movement, where people are the Democrats are saying, I'm walking away from the party. I mean,
I am very familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Kanye West on SNL giving his speech saying that welfare was really a plot of the Democrat Party to divide the black family. A week later, you have the UFC fighter Derek Lewis, that says, a black guy, that says that Donald Trump called him before the fight and asked him to knock this Russian expletive out because they're making him look bad on the news. Then you had another UFC fighter, Lentz is his name. He comes out right after he wins. Joe Rogan asks, so, what do you think? And he says, first of all, I want to thank, and I'm thinking, okay, he's going to thank God. No, he's like, I just want to give a shout out to, my homie Brett Kavanaugh, Special K, way to go. There's a big shift happening in pop culture, I think, potentially. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, and people kind of gravitate toward one side or the other because it's hard to be in the middle. I don't know how anybody could really be in the middle. I mean, I understand some people share values of, some people share some liberal values and some conservative values, and it must be very frustrating. But it's been so polarized that people, I don't know how you can do that. I mean, I actually have a friend who I was just talking to yesterday, and we were talking about this, and he has some left-wing values, some right-wing values, but it's so difficult. So I think what happens is people will just gravitate toward one side or the other because it just feels better. It feels easier. And so I think that's what's happening. I look at Taylor Swift. She came out with some, crazy left-wing position, and I think she did it just because of the pressure over there. There's a ton of pressure in the music industry, in the movie industry, and they know that there's a ton of pressure. And these people want to continue to work, and they want to continue to make money. So this is what we have to stop. We have to be able to help people who want to come over to the conservative side, help them know that it's okay, it's safe over here, and we will welcome them. There's some that just can't be helped, and they need to be defeated. So I guess it's a balancing act. But the left-wing propaganda is just way too corrupt, and they really have sunk their teeth into these people, and it's just a shame.
Well, and they they have no problem, putting out these accusations. And then you have, I was watching this video with Nancy Pelosi. We're talking with Dan Wass, National Second Amendment advocate. He's the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy. You need to check it out. You can go to goodgunbadguy.net. I was watching this video of Nancy Pelosi, and I know, why was it doing that? And she was essentially saying, she was admitting of a tactic. I can't remember what she called it. It escapes me at this point. But she was essentially saying, you make the accusation, you get the media to write about your accusation, and then the politician comes back and references the media report, where, you know, and it's this, it's a way to deceive people. It's a way to form a narrative that's not really there, or the narrative that's there, but the facts are missing from it because it's just based on accusations. And that's exactly the tactic that we saw during the Kavanaugh situation, and that's what we see when they try to take your guns away. You know, they come up with these statistics that are phony, and then that are cited by a politician, but then the media parrots them and writes them, and now you have the report to back up, and it's just it's hard to figure out where the truth is.
Yeah, and the same thing happened with the Russian dossier. That was the same cycle that they used, and then they'll have the media reports to use as verification or justification, and it's a false report because they actually encouraged that report. I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's just a terrible thing. They do it all the time with Second Amendment stuff, with gun rights. And, you know, I mean, the truth is, guns are used 2.5 million times per year to save lives in America, and they don't want you to know that. And, you know, so the propaganda will tell you, the guns kill 30,000 people a year. Well, you know, if you take out cop killings, you know, good guys killing bad guys, and you take out suicides, you're left with about 5,000, which is tiny when you compare it to, you know, even drunk driving. Drunk driving is deaths related to drunk driving is 10,000. It's twice as much as any type of, you know, gun-related homicides. But they don't really want to save lives. They're only concerned with saving lives where a gun is involved, because the real thing that they want to do is restrict good, law-abiding citizens of their gun rights. And you have to ask yourself, why is it that the most violent people in our country are the ones that are trying to restrict gun rights of their opposition.
That is a great point. The leftists, their mob tactics, Antifa. Can you imagine if we were not armed as conservatives? What a deterrent.
Exactly.
Dan Wass, I got one more question before we go.
Sure.
Just prediction, and what are your feelings? Do the Democrats take the House? Yes, no?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think we got a chance, but that doesn't mean that Republicans can get lazy. We have to get out there and drag our family members and our neighbors and anybody that we can. If they need a ride, bring them, because we need the vote. Every vote is important. Every vote is needed. I do think we'll come to the table and we'll make it happen, though.
Dan Wass, I appreciate it. It's always great to have you on. Again, folks, go check out his book. It is goodgunbadguy.net. And we really appreciate it, Dan. Sorry we had those technical difficulties earlier.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me, Paul.
All righty. Be safe. Folks, we're going to take a break, going to reset, be back here in just a moment. By the way, today is the last day in Arkansas to register to vote or to update your information. So you want to do that today. You got to, if you send it by mail, you got to have that postmarked by today. You can also just go and do it online. All those links are available right now at conduitnews.com. So if you want to register to vote, go to conduitnews.com, click on that first page story. It's right there at the top. And today is the last day to register to vote here in Arkansas. Go make a difference. Become, have a say in our republic. We're going to be back here in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Senator Brian King is with us from District 5. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Paul.
Can I have a loan? Is that something that you think you can give me, like a zero payment? I don't want any interest either, by the way.
Yeah, and first, Paul, I want to say when we're talking about the loan stuff, it's not that people think that when you get in the legislature and you're a public person, you're out there and everything you do, and sometimes I equate it to getting arrested. Everything you do and say can and will be used against you. But I've been on hard times in my life. Could be there again tomorrow. When it's not that we're mocking people on hard times. So when we're talking about the loan part, what we're talking about is the hypocrisy of these people. I mean, you sit here and you look at it, and I keep saying, telling people, well, I go to the bank, but when I said...
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We had a great first hour. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about President Donald Trump. You know what? When President Trump yesterday, he came out in the ceremony, Brett Kavanaugh, whole audience at the White House. The other Supreme Court justices were there as well. Former Justice Kennedy was there, kind of passing the helm. You had Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her iron lung were present. She was there as well. Ruth Bader Ginsburg essentially... hey, you know what I did notice? She was sitting right next to CT, to Clarence Thomas. And when President Trump said, you go back and watch the video, he said that you are innocent until proven guilty. I looked over at Clarence Thomas in the video, and he is just clapping. Like, he's clapping hard because he knows, he's like, I've been living with this forever. And you know what? I thought to myself, because most of the justices remained seated when they gave a standing ovation to Mitch McConnell. They remain seated because they get to stay neutral. But you're telling me that it's not? Of course, you can have an opinion. If you are a justice of the Supreme Court, I'm going to say that the one thing that you can be emotional about is being innocent until proven guilty. That's something that every one of those justices should have been like, yes, absolutely, yes, yeah, that's exactly right. So President Trump, he starts the proceeding after he recognizes the justices who are there and everything else. He starts the proceeding by saying, I want to apologize to Brett Kavanaugh, who has gone through all of this stuff, historic scrutiny, and then he talked about how basically this was just a plot and political nonsense. And, of course, is going to drive the left mad, because then he went on to say, and by the way, you were proven innocent. And I'm just saying, that take note, Republicans. Take note, Republicans here at the local level. Really, any leader anywhere. That is what it's like to be a leader. That is what it's like to actually be, to take charge and to lead based on what your own thoughts are. Also, what everybody knows the truth is. I mean, how often do you get a situation where everybody knows what the real truth is? Everybody knows what you're thinking, but then your leader says something else and says something like, oh, well, the fence is quite nice. I like the fence. I like the boundary that it sets from this side and this side. As a matter of fact, it's really nice to just put a saddle on the fence so that I have a nice, comfortable place. You don't want to just sit on the pickets. You want a saddle so you can straddle both sides equally and make everyone feel fine while ignoring the obvious, which is there's somebody right in this situation and there's somebody wrong in this situation. Now, understanding that nobody's perfect, but in this situation, Trump just said, I don't know if you can go back and listen to the first hour, we played it. He's saying what everyone is thinking. We also talked about last hour, if you missed it, how you have these conflicting articles. I'm sick of reading. Republicans are afraid of a Democratic blue wave. And now we have new polls suggesting that Democrats are now saying, we may not take the House. O'Rourke may not have a chance at beating Ted Cruz. But yet you see it constantly, this voter suppression, these stories about how there's an 80% chance the Democrats take the House. 80%? Really? 80%? Anyway, we're going to be back here tomorrow. We got a great show for you tomorrow. We're going to be talking. Hang on a second. We got tomorrow on the program Mr. John Calvin Martin with the Patriots VEC 746, as well as from the Remembrance Project. We're going to have Maria Espinoza back on the program talking about illegal immigration. Haven't covered that topic in a while. Folks, we will see you tomorrow Go to conduitnews.com right now. Today is the last day to register to vote. All of the links, all of the addresses that you would need to register to vote today are up at conduitnews.com right now on the front page.